We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. If you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. If you want to donate to this Rebel Outpost, show your support through a donation, help us keep the lights on. Just hit that $sign where you make a comment, and I'll get to your super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome, everybody, even those Southeastern Conference fans. Everybody is welcome into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to become a legend with your comments and with your phone calls later in the show. I was not going to do a live show before noon today, Central Time. But I saw Ross Dellinger's post. I saw his news. The SEC, we're going to show it to you in a little bit here. The SEC, the Southeastern Conference, internally has socialized that they do not support the 442213. That is not what has gotten me up in an uproar this morning. The Southeastern Conference would want to stay at 8 conference games. And the Big Ten, if you support the 5+11, having the SEC remain at 8 conference games, you would have lost your ever-loving minds. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. The title of the show is the Big Ten, they got to take their gloves off. It's bare knuckle fighting time. Bare knuckle fighting time. Big Ten, look, this is a national college football YouTube show. And for the Big Ten people in the chat room, listening, watching, I'm going to rip on Tony Petitti again. So if you are sensitive to the fact that I'm going to rip on the Big Ten commissioner, you should probably not watch this live show. I'm sorry. I got to be authentic. If you are a fan of a Big Ten school and you cannot take the criticism of your commissioner, this is not the live show for you. If you are an SEC fan and you don't like it that Greg Flugar is going Big Ten homer today, and I never go Big Ten homer. Really, I don't. But if you don't like that I'm going Big Ten homer today, this ain't going to be the live show for you. And for all you ACC, Big 12, fans of Big 12 ACC schools that enjoy the Big Ten and the SEC ripping the heart out of each other, maybe this is the show for you. But the Big Ten, now again, it's not official, but it's official that I got to be eating a cheeseburger because the 442213 is not going to happen. The Big Ten ain't going to get their 4 auto bids. The SEC ain't going to get their 4 auto bids. So when it becomes official, I will eat the abomination of a cheeseburger live on PATC. But N taking the big L because the Big Ten thought this was in the bag, so to speak. But the SEC, what they're trying to do, what the Southeastern Conference is trying to do is have everything. I mean everything. They want they want 5+11, which I'm okay with, but I'm not okay with the other 2 things here that the SEC is pushing. 5+11 remain at 8 conference games and bully in this metric system in which the SEC they're really going to get an automatic 6-7 teams in every single year. They're trying to do the triple play here. The Big Ten cannot throw their support. And I don't think they're going to. But it's time to go bare knuckles. It's time, first of all, for Petitti to call Sankey and said, thank you very much, but this advisory group, we're shutting this sucker down. Obviously, everything we've talked about between our two conferences, we're shutting this down. Why are we talking at all? To be honest with you, we got this new governance thing, right? That's going to be happening June 23rd, where everyone's supposed to be locking arms and kumbaya. Nobody's locking arms. Nobody's locking arms. The SEC, if you don't go to 9 conference games, well, we got the right to stay at 8. Well, okay. The Big Ten has the right to just to pull out of everything. There is no way that the Big Ten... We did an episode earlier this morning. If you did not see it, shame on you. Go watch it later on. We did an episode this morning. Bill Conley, ESPN, SP Plus rankings, basically saying the SEC should go, he said it, they should go to 9 conference games. If they stay at 8 with the 5+11, it is too advantageous. It's too, for non-conference, it is too advantageous for the SEC. ACC and Big 12, I'm going to level into you guys as well here. If you think of 5+11 world with the SEC staying at 8 conference games, Bill Conley showed, he ran simulations. If the SEC has 9 conference games, they're going to be averaging 4.7 playoff teams per year at 9 conference games and a 5+11. If they remain at 8, they're going to be at 6.2. So there's going to be some years they're going to get 7 teams in. Possibly 8. Big 12, I got to tell you, man, you're sitting there at 9 conference games. You are inducing more losses mathematically. And on top of all this, Greg Sankey is talking about, get this. That last year's committee did not do a good enough job. That last year's committee did not do a good enough job for the SEC. So we need to change it to where the committee socializes the strength of schedule even more than they do. And they already do, by the way. And Bill, again, watch that episode earlier today. If we would have had the 5+11 last year, let me ask the question. So you guys can answer it in the chat room. If we had 5+11 last year, how many teams would the SEC had in the playoffs? How many? How many teams? Put it down. Put the number down. Ryan Brooks says 6. He's correct. 6. Was it a great year for the SEC last year? Not really. I still think they're the best conference in the country, but they would have had 6. The Big Ten would have had 4. The Big 12 would have had 1. The ACC would have had 2. Come on, guys. In a down year for the SEC, they would have had 6 teams in the playoffs, and it wasn't good enough for Sankey. Whatever the committee, however they decided, it wasn't good enough. Even though they would have had 6 teams in. They want your cake. They want the icing on the cake. They want everything. Come on, wake up. The SEC has to go to 9 games. They go to 9 games, this can work out. But if they don't go to 9 games, if the SEC does not go to 9 games, if the Southeastern, by the way, the Southeastern Conference, I love you guys. I do. I love you. Best powerful conference in the country. And every time I say that, I got Big Ten people raining down on me. That's fine. But you I know a couple coaches said, yeah, let's do that cross scheduling with the Big Ten. You don't want that. You're not going to get it. You don't want it. You don't want it. The Big Ten wanted it. The SEC don't want it. The SEC does not want to go against the Big Ten. With all the big, tell me I'm wrong. They want their 8 conference games. They want to be able to play Mercer in Week 11, Citadel. So what can the Big Ten do? Well, first of all, there is some confusing reports up. Now, we are 17 minutes into this Saturday show. And I haven't even brought up the report of Ross Dellinger. Let's go through the reporting of Ross Dellinger so everybody is on the same page. Let's do that first. Of course, now I lost it. Hold on. Ross Dellinger. More info is being socialized with other conferences about the discussions Thursday from the Southeastern Conference athletic directors and presidents. The league is indicating that it is not supporting a automatic qualifier format 4-4-2-2-1, preferring instead more at-large bids plus a selection committee criteria change. Okay, so the SEC, now get it, now listen up. Big 10, Big 12, ACC. Okay, they don't want the 4-4-2-2-1. I'm cool with that. Some are, some not. I think there's advantages and disadvantages, both sides. Plus a selection committee criteria change. And in the old criteria, would have had 6 SEC teams in last year. 6 of them. In a down year in the SEC, where the strength is, where Alabama was already given, I am lost. What in the hell does the SEC want? They would have had 6 teams in on the last criteria, but they want to cinch it up even more. They want those 8-4 records in the SEC to be able to skip over an 11-1, 10-2 team in the Big 12, ACC, Big 10. Okay, that's not it. That's not all. Again, if I'm gonna be going after Tony Petiti here. So if you're squeamish about me going after your beloved commissioner, this is not the live show for you. If you're squeamish about me throwing elbows at the SEC, this is not the live show for you. Big 12 and ACC, wake up. Wake the bleep up. And if you're squeamish about that, this is not the live show for you. And for those who've been proselytizing to me, those who've been saying, great, everything is kumbaya. Everything is kumbaya. Remember that governance, Greg? It's going to be June 23rd, Greg. This is all a smoke screen, Greg. Come on. There is no kumbaya. There is no smoke screen. This is Machiavellian. We had a live show on it last month. We had the picture of Machiavellian in the bubble screen. This is pure Machiavellian. From the Big Ten, from the SEC, from the Big 12. Everyone is looking out for their self-interest. In the SEC, after advisory group meetings with the Big Ten talking about the college football playoff format, completely flips on the Big Ten. So it's time for the Big Ten to take their gloves off, and we're going to be talking about the options that the Big Ten has in front of them. And some of them are radical, but this is where we are at. Now, Ross Dellinger. The league showed support for a multi-AQ format in the CFP meetings with fellow commissioners. Yeah, they did. And they started with the Big Ten in those advisory groups. The Big Ten's got to be sitting there going, what the hell happened? And they're also saying, we can't trust those guys. Honestly. The SEC showed support. Okay. The pushback from a variety of groups, including its own coaches. CFP data provided by the conference. Yeah, because they're going to be scooping up all these at-large bids. Staying at 8 conference games. Wake up, Yormark. Wake up, Phillips. Petiti, take the gloves off. Has moved university administrators towards a different approach. Well, yeah, if there's a scenario out there in which the SEC can have their cake, their icing, take the Big 12's cake and their icing, and the ACC, their cake and their icing, of course they're going to move in that direction. Leaders from 2 of the SEC's biggest brands, Georgia and Alabama, were influential during conversations this week over a pivot from a format that potentially limited the league to 4 playoff spots and required an additional playing game, sources tell Yahoo Sports. Again, the 4-4-2-2-1-3 could have limited the SEC to 4 spots. It could have. Or the SEC would have picked up an at-large bid, whatever. But they don't want that because everything is showing the SEC that they're going to be, if they stay at 8 conference games, they're going to be scooping up. They're going to be scooping up spots. They're going to have 7 SEC teams, possibly 8. The average is 6.2. If you watch our episode earlier this morning, read Bill Conley's article. The 5+11 format, Ross Dellinger, 5 champs plus 11 at-large bids is in no way a guarantee for approval, as the Big Ten may not support such a model. if the SEC remains at 8 conference games. It should not say may not. Petiti, I'm going after you next. Tony Petiti. There is no way on God's green earth should a national college football reporter not know if the Big Ten will or will not support that. The SEC should know this morning, today. Your Mark should get a phone call. Philip should get a phone call. Everybody should know already. Not in private, and oh my God, in public. Petiti should be on the mountaintop yelling it for everybody to see, everybody to hear. Everybody needs to look at Tony Petiti and have him say, this is not working for us, brother. Ross Dellinger has to say may not support such a move because Ross Dellinger doesn't know because Petiti is silent. Enough of the silence. In fact, you got to go above that. You can't be silent no more. You got to take the gloves off. You let everybody take shots at Indiana last year. Remember that? And I came on live here and I said people were pissed in the Big Ten that you were not saying a word of support. And then a bunch of Big Ten, PATC family members, I like our commissioner this way. I think our commissioner is just fine. It's not going to do any damage. Petiti, man. Are you a man or are you a mouse? That is where we are at right now. Two parallel discussions, back to Dellinger. CFP format. SEC, 8 or 9 games are expected to continue in the next week. Today is May 31st. Today is May 31st. The SEC has socialized their intentions. They leaked it. They gave the information to Ross Dellinger. On a Saturday, Ross Dellinger comes out and says this is the SEC's intentions. 5 plus 11. They don't want to go to 9 conference games. And they want to tweak the criteria for the committee once again, even though they would have had 6 teams in. When Alabama lost to Oklahoma 24-3, and I'm sorry, but that team was done at the end of the year. It's time for the Big Ten. There are 2 parts to this. Phase 1, say something. Not only in private, but in public. And then there is phase 2. What are the Big Ten options? What are the Big Ten options going forward? Phase 1. Talk out loud. You know what you know that the SEC was given all indications of alignment to the Big Ten. I mean, for God's sake, I knew that. This is why I reported what we reported here at Peek Around the Corner. So the SEC also asked for your support when it came to certain things when the 10 commissioners went and built the enforcement arm, the Sports Commission and the Sports Commission, the SEC asked the Big Ten for certain things, and that it was for a legit enforcement arm in connection with the Deloitte Clearinghouse. In return, the Big Ten would get their support for the 4-4, 2-2. So, Petiti, you know what has been said to you. You know the feelings in the room on those advisory groups. Ross Dellinger and others have reported accurately. And now look what's happened, Petiti. Now look what's happened. You can't be silent anymore. They're playing you like a chump. You got to come out and say no. And it should not be a long time. It should happen today. Why would we wait another day? Say this ain't gonna work. You go to 9 games, SEC. Maybe we can make this work. 5 plus 11. Maybe by the way, both conferences, they're throwing a lot of money down in the toilet. Potential future earnings. Not potential. It was a done deal. Okay, fine. Fine. But you got to go to 9 games. Phase 2. Phase 2. What are the Big Ten options? There has been a confusion. A confusion here, even in the reporting. Because the Big Ten and the SEC, if they agree with each other, they can push the format. Right? They basically create the format. But what if it's the Big Ten alone and the SEC, ACC, Big 12 all coming together and saying 5 plus 11, we're okay with the criteria of whatever the SEC wants? Does the Big Ten not have any recourse? I don't know the answer to that question. The idea that the Big Ten has a veto power over the next college football playoff format is not clear to me. It really isn't. The college football is an LLC. There are voting rights in that LLC. And the voting rights has the Big Ten and the SEC as the clear majority. But if they don't agree with each other, and if the SEC picks up the Big 12 and the ACC, then I think the SEC might be able to get everything they want. 5 plus 11, a criteria that favors the SEC even more, and staying at 8 conference games. Holy smokes. It may be time for the Big Ten to go radical here. Because if it ends up 5 plus 11, with the criteria favoring these early polls even more, and where it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, ESPN, if you got a 5 plus 11 with the SEC at 8 conference games, we're not going to be seeing Texas and Ohio State games anymore. Why would a Big Ten school do that? Why would USC play Notre Dame? Again, the SEC has to go to 9 conference games for this to work. And I know there's great pushback among the SEC family members. But they got to go to 9 games. If not, then there is a war brewing. And the Big Ten, I think I'm being serious here. Because if the SEC stays at 8 games, ladies and gentlemen, at a 5+11, you're basically starting the race with the SEC at a 1.5 furlongs horse race. The SEC has a 4-second start on the Big Ten and an 8-second start on the Big 12 and the ACC. So if this actually happens, if the SEC garners enough support and the Big Ten can't block it, and if it's a 5+11, criteria even favors the SEC even more, or the strength of schedule, that criteria, that metric boosts up in importance based upon what early polls and historical stuff. If all that happens, the Big Ten's got to go radical. If that actually is the end result of all this, after all the advisory meetings between the Big Ten and the SEC, if this is the end result, 5+11, SEC 8 conference games, and the criteria gets tweaked in favor of the SEC even more, it's time for the Big Ten to absolutely go radical. And what do I mean by that? It would be time for the Big Ten to not worry about the pawns on the chessboard, not worry about the little horsies, not worry about the king or the queen. It would be time for the Big Ten to flip the chessboard. It would be time for the Big Ten to go ahead and execute their plans, their future plans, without Notre Dame. It would be time for the Big Ten cannot go the next 5 years with the 5+11 SEC 8 conference games, tweaking the criteria even more in their favor. The Big Ten would need to execute their plans. Go ahead and call Notre Dame up. Call Notre Dame up and say, we're not waiting for you. This is not a call to ask if you are interested. This is a call for us to tell you we're not interested and we're going to execute our plan without you. Notre Dame knows exactly what that means. And then the Big Ten gets on the horn, or let's say this. They have their people talk to other people, and it's time for the Big Ten to land themselves into the southeastern part of this country. Because if the SEC, now again, I said, look, this ain't, for a lot of you, you should turn this off. I don't want you to, but I get it. I don't want you mad at me for the rest of the day. This is not life and death. This is not life and death. This is what we're all passionate about, college football. This is the home for college football sickles. But if it's too squeamish for you, for me to lay into Petiti, this ain't the live show for you. If you don't like that I'm taking elbow shots at Sankey, this is not the live show for you. If you are a Big 12 ACC, a fan of one of those two schools, and you don't like that I'm telling you to wake up, this is not the live show. I love all of you. Please come back to the next live show. this week. But I got a feeling that this is going to be part of the live shows going forward. It's time for the Big Ten. If the SEC gets their way, and boy, they're inching closer and closer to it because they socialized it. They want this change. They feel good about it. They leaked this. They leaked it to Ross Dellinger. They're socializing this with other conferences. They're letting it known. Yes, Big 12. Yes, ACC. We're on board. And I know you guys will let us stay with 8 conference games. You don't have a problem with that. There would be more non-conference games that we can schedule against you guys in and around our Mercer games, in and around our Citadel games late into the season. They know the Big 12 and the ACC are not going to put up a fight with 5 plus 11. The criteria change. It's time for the Big Ten to get radical. It's time for the Big Ten to tell Notre Dame, we start executing our plan. It might take a year. It might take 2 years. But we're not sitting around. We're going deep into southeastern part of this country. And we're willing to maybe look at things a little different. We may be willing to look at things just a little different. If this is the partnership with the SEC, if this is what it ends up being, maybe we look at things radically different in the Big Ten. Maybe we go into the heart of SEC country. Maybe we do take those biggest football brands. You know, ladies and gentlemen, hold on a second. You know, I've been sitting here going, since June 15th of last year, I've been saying Florida State ain't the number one target of the Big Ten. We had the doors open to us. We put that out there. I got dragged over the coals. Then there was big reports that came 6 weeks later. Brett McMurphy and everybody else saying the same thing. And it's been accurate. It's been 100% true. And you know who else knew that? That the Big Ten was looking at other things other than Florida State? The SEC. The Southeastern Conference. Everybody knew. Everybody knows that North Carolina is the number one target for both conferences. And then whoever doesn't get North Carolina, the domino pieces will fall however they fall. Nothing is imminent. But maybe the Big Ten has to look at this differently. Maybe they need to start putting out some threats. Maybe they should have an open door meeting that everybody can see, that everybody can witness, that the reporters can freely talk about. Maybe they should have a meeting with the Seminoles. Maybe they should have a meeting with the Clemson Tigers. Maybe they should have a meeting with the Miami Hurricanes, all out in the open. Maybe the Big Ten should go to that giant conference that everybody has been fearing. When you got the SEC in advisory meetings for months and you are aligned, but suddenly you are not, and where the SEC is trying to have a system that favors them, they're the best conference in the nation, but favors the SEC. Now they want to make it favor even more just because Alabama was not picked over Indiana and SMU. Maybe it's time for the Big Ten to go radical. If the SEC stays at 8 conference games and pushes through a 5+11, it's time for the Big Ten not to play around with the chess pieces on the board. It's time to flip the board over. I have been very comfortable in saying that the people at Rosemont, Illinois, they have their binoculars out and they're continuing looking at Birmingham, and the people at Birmingham always are looking towards Rosemont, Illinois. Because there is no trust. This advisory thing is a complete bust. Now, if the SEC in the next couple of weeks, as Dellinger says, they're going to be debating, they're going to be going back and forth, 8 or 9 conference games, 8 or 9 conference games, 8 or 9 conference games. But they're going to be reading Bill Connelly's report this morning. And this is why I did an episode this morning. Go check it out, episode 437. Bill Connelly lays it out perfectly. He lays it out. He says, if you go to 9 conference games, SEC, in a 5+11, you're going to be averaging 4.7 playoff bids a year. Sometimes you're going to get 5. There are going to be a few years you're going to get 6. But if you stay at 8 conference games, you're going to be averaging 6.2 playoff bids per year. Some years you're going to get 7. There's going to be a couple years you're going to get 8. So the SEC is going to be battling 8 or 9, 8 or 9, 8 or 9. Well, you know what? They've already thrown money away because they're not going to have playing games. They've already thrown money away because they're not going to have this crossover game with the Big Ten. $5 million per year per school, is that worth losing 1.5 playoff bids a year? Losing 2 bowl eligible teams a year? Because Bill Connelly's report also says that the SEC would go from 13.4 eligible bowl teams a year on average to 11.4. The SEC is trying to drink everybody's milkshake, and the Big Ten has got to act in public, not just in private. The SEC leaked this out there this morning. It's time for the Big Ten to start leaking like a sieve and say, this doesn't work for us, brother. You're going to 9 conference games, or we've got options. If it ain't Florida State and Clemson, it's Miami and Georgia Tech, whatever it is. Whatever it is. At this point, whatever it is, change it up. I'm sorry, ACC, but if the Big Ten has to go in there, they got to do it. You cannot go 5 years in this playoffs, this format. You cannot go 5. Look. Let's say this. I'm going to try to explain it in a different way. When the Big Ten and the SEC, when they went for this power move, together, right? They were together. They got more of the distribution money in the playoffs. They got more governance power in the playoffs. They did this together, right? That came at a political cost. Look, the Big Ten and the SEC, there are the villains. You can't blame 3/4 of the country looking at them saying, look what you guys are now. Look how greedy you are now. The Big Ten, the SEC, they played a political cost, but they figured the cost was worth it because now if they work together, they can push whatever they want through, yada, 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 advisor group. But at the end of the road, if the SEC gets everything they want, a change in the criteria, 5+11, that gives them 7 bids some seasons, 6 in another. If they stay at 8 conference games, and all those coaches can if they get everything they want and the Big Ten is sitting there going, we did all that for this, then the Big Ten has got to go radical. And if Fox doesn't want to go radical with them, then the Big Ten might have to look at going radical with one of those 4 private equity firms that they're talking to. But they cannot go the next 5 years in a 1.5 furlong race where the SEC, their thoroughbred, can get out of the gate 4 seconds before your gate opens every single year in this new college football playoff format that now suddenly the SEC is pushing. Okay, let's go to your super chats. We're going to get to your phone calls here. That's the only story I'm covering. I'm going to go through real quick the Ross Dellinger post of this morning before we hit your phone calls. Bill G, 5 gifted memberships. Thank you so very much. Again, I apologize, guys, that we did not do a roll call, but I wanted to get up on here. I wanted to get up on this chair, the fat guy from Minnesota. And for the very first time since we've opened up this YouTube show, I am going full-time Big Ten homer on this. Five plus 11, SEC going to 9 conference games. We can make this work. I'd rather have the 5+11 because I don't like the predetermination of these auto bids. But I got to tell you, I got to be honest with you. If we go 5+11 and the SEC remains at 8 conference games, I'm for that ugly 4-4-2-2-1 or the 4-4-3-3 or whatever else you got in your bag over there. Because the 5+11 with the SEC at 8 conference games, that is the SEC's Christmas, birthday, Easter bunny, tooth fairy, all of them coming to their house at one time. Okay. Bill G, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. And those who got the memberships, please say thank you to Bill G. All of you, I don't know who got them anymore. All of you are knighted cloak and dagger. Thank you so much, Bill G. I appreciate it so very much. Thank you. Sean, Expedition Greg, sorry, let me do Expedition Greg, sent a gift membership. Whoever got that membership, please say thank you to Mr. Buckeye Expedition Greg. Expedition Greg, and the gentleman or gentlewoman who got the membership, you are officially knighted. Cloak and dagger, thank you for being a member of our program. Thank you, Expedition Greg. Thank you, Bill G, for your continued generosity on this show, helping us keep the lights on so we can do these live crazy shows almost every single day. Sean, Greg, this is an ESPN play. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Sankey is just a puppet for the mouse. The Big Ten needs their network to step up on their behalf, just like the ESPN does for SEC. And I got to tell you, Sean, the only way I can see the Big Ten having the control to step up is to go into the heart of the southeastern part of this country. North Carolina, Virginia, the whole Florida State Clemson thing, look at that completely different now. Look at everything different. Go in there And again, flip the chessboard. Flip it up. Flip it up. Flip it up. Get rid of the chessboard. Sean, you're absolutely correct. Thank you for the super chat. Again, I'm speaking from a Big Ten point of view. The SEC point of view, Sankey is working it. Sankey is working it. And he's about to deliver you everything on a silver platter. And the Big 12 and the ACC, woo! I don't know what to say. You've got to insist to Greg Sankey, the Big 12 and the ACC, you got to do your own switcheroo. You have to insist to Greg Sankey that he goes from 8 conference games to 9. And if he doesn't, that you'll throw your support, that you will suddenly throw your support with something else, with some other auto bid compromise. Because the SEC is about to just rake it in on you too. Sean, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it so very much, your generosity. Preston from Greensboro. Can the ACC go to 7 games? I have no idea. Probably not. I don't think the Big Ten can go to 8 games because they got all those media partners. I don't think so. I don't think the ACC can do that. I mean, I can understand why they would. Avoid losses. Avoid losses. Preston from Greensboro, thank you so much for your incredible support. Can they? I don't think they can. I don't think they can. I don't think they can. But again, we're just speculating. We're thinking radical thoughts here, right? Because again, for those who believe everything is kumbaya and there is no battle going on right now, holy smokes. Sankey will not be lectured to. Woo. Yeah. Clint Moses, who wants to ruin college football? Go for it, Big Ten. Immortality. Take it. It's yours. I get it. A lot of people you should be upset with what I'm saying. What the Big Ten should do next. You should be upset. This is a national college football YouTube show, and I said at the very beginning of the show, this is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to take it from the Big Ten homer's point of view. The Big Ten has been talking with the SEC on this, and suddenly everything has turned. And Petiti, you cannot remain quiet. Today, you got to talk today, brother. You got to say something today. Wake up. The SEC are throwing, the commissioner is throwing barbs at the ACC and the Big 12, but now suddenly the SEC is in agreement with the ACC and the Big 12. And you're sitting there silent. You've got to let everybody know. Everybody know today where the Big Ten stands. Again, we're going to go through real quick here. Ross Dellinger. Then we're going to open up the phone lines. We're going to open up the phone lines. Okay? Real quick for people who've just arrived. Ross Dellinger. More info is being socialized with other conferences about the discussions Thursday from the Southeastern Conference athletic directors and presidents. In other words, the SEC is letting the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Big 12 know where they stand. The league is indicating that it is not supporting a multi-automatic auto format 4-4-2-2-1, preferring instead more at-large bids and a selection committee criteria change. They want that criteria change to favor more of the strength of schedule, the early polls, and everything that is just so artificial about it. Wake up, ACC. Wake up, Big 12. They want more at large and a selection committee criteria change. And the previous criteria would have had 6 SEC teams in the playoffs, and the Big 12 won. Hey, Yormark. Are you listening, Yormark? 6 SEC teams, 1 Big 12 team in an SEC off year, where the SEC wasn't great, where they lost baffling non-conference games, where the best of the SEC teams lost to the worst of the SEC teams, they would have still gotten 6 teams in. And they want to change that to favor them even more. Yormark, Phillips, wake up. Petiti, say something. Ross Dellinger, the 5+11 format, 5 champs plus 11 at-large bids is in no way a guarantee for approval, as the Big Ten may not support such a model if the SEC remains at 8 conference games. Tony Petiti, you got to tell Sankey today, you got to go to 9. We're not supporting this. We are not supporting this at all. And by the way, Greg Sankey, no more advisory group meetings between these 2 conferences. Those 2 messages have to ring out today by the Big Ten. Okay, let's go to your phone calls. Tell me how wrong I am once again. The phone lines are now open. 763-260-1333. 763-260-1333. And Petiti. If things go completely pear-shaped,
from
Grateful Children.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Is this Grateful Trojan?
Yes, sir. How are you doing, Greg?
Yep. Can you hold on for just 1 minute? I just want to finish my thought.
Of course.
And Petiti, if everything goes pear-shaped, and if you are unable to stop the 5+11, SEC stays at 8 conference games, and the criteria change and everything else. If you are unable to stop that, and I don't know if you are or not, and the reporting of it is quite confusing, it's time for you to go all radical, to take the gloves off, to go bare-knuckle fighting. Jake Sullivan was the last bare-knuckle heavyweight champion of the world back in the days, 1890s, whatever. Google it, Jake Sullivan. Tony Petiti has to go Jake Sullivan. I think his first name was Jake. I know his last name was Sullivan. You got to go all Sullivan on the SEC and everybody else. You cannot let this stand. You got to tell Notre Dame we are proceeding with our plans. Without you, we're going to go into the heart of the SEC country, and we're going to start taking teams, and we're going to grow this conference bigger, and we're going to get ready to do what we need to do if all this goes pear-shaped. Grateful Trojan, the floor is yours.
John, hey, Greg, how are you? Good to hear you.
Good to hear you, Grateful Trojan. I got a correction. Richard L. says John L. Sullivan. That is correct. I was wrong. I'm getting old. The memory is fading. Go ahead, Grateful Trojan.
So I kind of want to preface this with saying, before, people say, oh, what's a Trojan, coming in and saying what the Big Ten should do since we're the new kids on the block and all that good stuff. I'm a Michigan born and raised native, grew up in the Big Ten, grew up going to the games in the Big House. So I know the lay of the land, and I've seen Harbaugh play ball in Michigan, so going back to those days. Basically, when you had that show, I don't know how many days ago it was, when SEC kind of changed where they were going with the 5+ format. That was my knee-jerk reaction. Is what you're saying on this show is just we need to raid now. It's time for war. It's a declaration of war, basically. It's like you had an alliance or allegiance, and they spit in your face, basically. So I would say what you're saying is the correct path to go. You got to go after the Seminoles. You have to go after even the Clemson Tigers. I know that doesn't really necessarily fit your academic agenda, but at the same time, it's gonna go right to the heart of the SEC. And I wouldn't necessarily just stop with that. I would start kicking the can or kicking around with Texas A&M. See how they feel about Texas coming into the league.
Yeah, I don't think they're interested at all. I really don't.
You gotta find out. You gotta find out. You need to get into Texas one way or another, and I don't think the brands that are available are necessarily what the Big Ten would desire. So Texas A&M will be the best chance to get into that territory just to see if they are available. And honestly, it might be worth looking at Colorado and Arizona State at this point and go after those markets as well. It might be time to go after a big expansion, and if it's going with private equity as well as a combination of media, then make it happen. Make it happen, because it's kind of like the WWF. When they decided to go national, all the regional brands died, basically. They died a slow death.
Well, I don't like the WWE. I'm an AEW guy. I was an AWA guy. I'm anti-WWE. So that's probably a bad example. But I understand. I understand what you're saying. I don't want all this to happen. All the SEC has to do. Every SEC fan that is really upset with me right now, the almighty Finn, B. Bean, all of them, Doug Scruggs, every SEC, Mr. SEC, Ryan Brooks, 1890s, isn't that the last Gopher title? Everyone who's upset with me right now, I understand. But all you got to do to make peace in the land is to go to 9 conference games. If you don't go to 9 conference games, we got a problem. They're telling you they're not going to. They are telling you they're not going to. Yeah.
They're crushing the numbers, and they're saying, why would we do that when we can get 8 teams in we can have half the field. We can control the field. And as long as they do that, we're not playing a fair game. It's not apples to apples. So you got to take a different approach to it. You have to, and I say start with going after their big brands right off the bat in their market, and expand from there. And the breakoff might just be the Big Ten. That's radical. That's radical right there.
Yeah.
And there's potential when you have partnerships with 3 major media brands already. And I'm not even speaking about Notre Dame. Notre Dame's going to Notre Dame. They're not going to. They're never going to do anything.
Well, they don't have to until the ACC gets poached. But the Big Ten is. See, the Big Ten's position. I'm going to let you go, Grateful Trojan, because we got so many callers lined up here. I appreciate it, my man. Trojan. Hello. Thank you, Grateful Trojan. Sorry about that. We got a lot of callers here. Hold on.
Call from
Jeff Fuller.
Jeff Fuller is on the line. The floor is yours. How you doing, sir?
I am doing great, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm all fired up. This is a little bit of a different show. It's a little uneasy out here. I'm doing the Big Ten homer on a national show today. Because
I understand.
But I'm telling you.
And I don't know if you're putting on a strong face for the good of the conference, the pride of the conference, and not being, one up by anyone. Another, the SEC and Sankey. Sorry, I'm catching my breath here.
No, go ahead.
Pause
Go ahead.
my bike, circumnavigating beautiful Lake Tuscaloosa
Beautiful.
right now. But
Beautiful.
hey, I've got an analogy for you. Yes, the SEC and Sankey, they are Darth Vader. They are powerful. They are menacing. They are imposing. They'll intimidate you with their breath. And Darth Vader's bad enough. But you know what? The Big Ten and Petiti, they're Emperor Palpatine. They're going to, stay behind the scenes. They're going to be hidden. But they do not have the best interests of college football at heart. And, there's that scene right at the very end of Return of the Jedi. Spoiler alert on a 45-year-old movie. But what happened there at the end?
Don't ask me. I
Darth Vader.
All those movies mix in my brain. I don't know one from the other.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sure. So Darth Vader has as the Emperor is about to kill the hero, Luke Skywalker. Darth Vader has a somewhat of a change of heart, almost a deathbed repentance, and saves the resistance, saves the hero, saves his son in that, and it's for the good of the empire, of the whole galaxy, even though it hurts the empire, and kills the Emperor Palpatine. So again, not the perfect analogy, but Sankey is he's out there, he speaks. Yes, I'm mad at him half the time. He's a blowhard. The messaging is often very tone deaf, but I'm just amazed at how the Big Ten, and you're sort of taking the mask off right now of what you want the Big Ten to do, in that you're saying, hey, we're not going to get our way. We're not just going to move the chess pieces. We're going to flip over the board. We're going to take our ball and go home. We're going to go intimidate. Not only was it good enough to destroy the Pac-12, and let's be honest, it was the Big Ten that destroyed the Pac-12. People say, well, the SEC started it by taking Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, you're Greg Sankey. What would you do if Texas and Oklahoma said, hey, we're leaving the Big 12 one way or another?
Well, and USC called the Big Ten, so that's
well, even that, again, I think any conference can survive a loss of two teams, but the Big Ten's plan was always, to take Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA, and they didn't want to do it all at once for optics and for legal reasons.
Correct.
But I mean, we knew for almost a year beforehand that, and you were saying on your show nonstop, that Oregon and Washington had been cleared and vetted, as McMurphy said.
And
so
that was correct.
I mean, the Big Ten and Petiti and Warren or whoever else you want to include, that blood is on their hands for already killing one conference, and the threats that you're saying right here, of, hey, we're Big Ten's going to move into the South, and we're gonna invade there, and let's kill the ACC next, and who cares about the Big 12? There is this good of college football in general. And I think I have a somewhat unique perspective. I live in Tuscaloosa. Yes, I'm an Alabama fan, but that's, maybe a tenth of the fandom that I feel for BYU. One of these, middle size, power power brands. The Yes is more powerful brand than a few schools in the SEC and in the Big Ten. But the big point is, I just do not trust Petiti. He seems like a boardroom commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't take questions. He doesn't apparently respond to reporters. Apparently all he wants to talk to is his school presidents and maybe athletic directors. I don't know if he talks to his coaches. I don't know if he again, maybe he's doing all this stuff and I'm just not seeing reports of it and not clued in, but he just seems, he's a businessman. He's a boardroom commissioner. Mm-hmm. And yes, he can present the financials. And, some of your callers, I think your first caller or second caller yesterday, I forget if it was Rick or someone else, he said, this 44221 3, you have to do it because there's so much money on the table that you cannot do it. Between the extra conference games that the SEC would have, mm-hmm. between the play-in games, between the Big Ten SEC scheduling agreement, and just let's think. I know I'm going on and on, but just think logistically about if the SEC goes to 9 games and adds a scheduling agreement. Many of these cross-conference rivalries are dead.
There's not going to be.
Clemson,
Let me interrupt you.
What's that?
Let me interrupt you a second. If the cross-scheduling thing is completely dead, regardless, because there's not going to be the auto bids. So the SEC going to 9 conference games, it's not going to be going to 9 conference games in a game with the Big Ten. That's not going to happen. So it's either 8 or 9. That is, and if they go to 9, they're all 9
with an agreement. The Big Ten's not going to do an agreement with the SEC if they stay at 8 games.
No,
correct.
The scheduling agreement is completely dead without auto bids. So the option is The option is 5 plus 11. SEC stays at 8 conference games, or 5 plus 11. The SEC goes to 9 conference games. If they stay at 8 conference games, we're going to have big issues. Yeah, I'm just saying that. I get it. I understand people, Big Ten evil and all that stuff. I get it. The mask is off, blah, blah, blah. I'm just telling you, if the SEC stays at 8 conference games, pretty much everything that the Big Ten and the SEC have discussed in the advisory meetings for months and have aligned on, the SEC would have flipped. So, of course, at that point in time, the Big Ten has to act. They have to for the good of the conference. They cannot. Anyways, I spent the whole show explaining it, but go ahead, John.
I understand for the good of the conference, but at a certain point, we're seeing that the good of the conference, the Big Ten, is killing other conferences. It's hurting regional rivalries.
All the SEC has to go.
Corrupts,
go to 9 conference games.
Absolutely,
go to 9 conference games.
I don't think the SEC will, because that if they go to 9 conference games, and that they're going to lose. Okay. Most schools are going to lose an extra home game.
Okay, so they're looking out for their self-interest, right? If they stay at 8 games, right? They want to change the criteria even more in favor of them, Jeff. Even more in favor of them. And that's local money, local economy. That's not playoff access. Now, we know that they want the playoff access. They want to have as many, and they are the best conference. You've said it. Everyone recognizes it. It's maybe not light years ahead of where it was, 5 to 20 years ago. That 15-year period, 5 to 20 years ago, was something we'll probably never see again, with one conference sort of dominating the sport. But I guess the lesson is don't make these consortiums or alliances or associations. People do not stay true to them. I mean, the alliance that the Big Ten started to sort of get back at the SEC, we should have had a playoff years ago. But aside from that alliance,
this association between the SEC and Big Ten. Hopefully it's falling apart. I hope and pray it does for the good of college football, even if there's going to be egg on the face of some. I just think it's best for the sport. And we may disagree on some of this, but hey, I appreciate the platform. I love the show. Loyal listener, and I'm going to enjoy seeing you eat that beautiful, wonderful, delicious cheeseburger.
That might be the last live show we have. So hopefully everyone enjoys it.
All right, great.
All right, thank you,
have a good one.
I'll be passed out. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, bye-bye.
Now, again, Jeff Fuller is a very intelligent person. BYU, but I think he speaks for a lot of people. Tony Petitti, did you hear that phone call? Did you hear that phone call?
Call from
Big Ten brother.
Big Ten brother, can you hold on for a moment, please?
I sure can, buddy.
I got to talk to Tony Petitti for a moment. Tony Petitti, did you hear that phone call that Jeff Fuller just said? Okay. Again, and I think Jeff Fuller speaks for a lot of people. The SEC, they're not going to get pushed back from Big 12 ACC country on this 5+11, and they stay at 8 conference games. You are the bad guy, Petitti, in this play that we're standing on the stage. So if you're going to be the bad guy anyways, be the bad guy for the good of your conference. You cannot let this stand. You cannot have a 5+11 and SEC remains at 8 conference games and then change the criteria. Jeff Fuller, very smart individual. I bet if we had 100 Big 12 calls, 100 ACC calls, it would basically go in the same direction. They're fine with the SEC has got you in a box. They got you in the corner. You got to take the gloves off. You're going to be screwed. You've done the Big Ten obtained political cost by getting this power with the SEC, by doing all this stuff. The cost has been exacted on you. You have been, but now you're not even getting the benefit of any of that. The SEC is. The SEC just took your milkshake if they stay at 8 conference games and it's 5+11. So yes, the Big Ten are the bad guys, but be the bad guys with benefits. My God, you and again, I'm sitting here and I'm checking X account. Say something. It's a simple public message. No, the Big Ten is not for the SEC staying at 8 conference games and a 5+11 because the Big Ten is screwed. And then with the SEC changing this criteria, if you're a national conference, if you are the Big Ten, act like it. Take the gloves off. It's bare knuckles time. You send a message to the SEC. Now, this can be in private. In public, you got to say so everybody can hear it. All your boosters can hear it. Everybody can hear it. You send the public message. This will not stand. 5+11 with 8 conference games, and you're tweaking the criteria even for more of your favor. No, this will not stand. In private, you send a message to the SEC. If you get your way on this, we're about to flip the chess table. And then you make one more phone call to Notre Dame and you say, if everything goes pear-shaped for the Big Ten on this, the thing we've been working on for an entire year, guess what, Notre Dame? We activate our southeastern plans in the United States without you. We go there first and you last if you're still interested. Who cares at this point? That is the message that the Big Ten has to send today. Big Ten brother, go ahead. Thanks for your phone call. The floor is yours.
Greg, you're spot on. I couldn't agree with you more. The last caller, when he said that he's riding his bike around Tuscaloosa Lake, said me everything I had to know about where he was getting his point of view. When he said the Big Ten has blood on their hands because
wait. Don't rip on the other college. You can rip on me. That's the rule of this.
Okay.
Don't
Leave
rip on
that
the
out.
other college. Jeff Foley is a great caller. He's got a different
I'm
point
sure
of
he's
view.
a great guy.
Go ahead.
I'm sure he's a great guy. Let's just take the perception of the Big Ten having blood on their hands when they expanded after the Big 12 had their agreement with Texas and Oklahoma. But getting back to the 8, let's get back to that again. If Petitti doesn't stand up and be if you want to call him the bad guy there, I call him a good businessman looking out for the Big Ten by expecting the SEC to go to 9 games and not sit at 8 games, he'd be absolutely crazy to take any deal where it stays they play 9 conference games and they play 8 conference games. And you're forgetting that Notre Dame is floating around out there, knocking on the doors of Big Ten schools, primarily USC, wanting to open up discussions on playing Big Ten schools to increase their deal with NBC of getting on their sliding scale. The harder the games they play, the more money they make. So of course they run out and sign Clemson. Now they're knocking down the door of USC, and of course Notre Dame wants to play those games. They want to hit the top end of their sliding scale. But if Petitti plays 9 conference games and then USC lets the Notre Dame in the door, they play Notre Dame every year. Then basically that's another conference game. Now USC's playing 11 conference games. They are 10 conference games.
USC cannot put that weight on their back every single year like that. This is why the USC has not agreed to the annual series. They don't trust what's going on. Absolutely. Go ahead, big brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's why Petitti, we're going to learn everything we want to know about Petitti with this situation right here. Does he have the guts to step up and say, that's it, talks are over? Unless the SEC goes to 9 conference games, I'm not even coming back to the table. And then you want to press for a one-on-one, a crossover game with the conferences, plus we have Notre Dame knocking on our door. So you're asking us basically to play 11 conference games every year to get into the playoffs where you're going to play 8. That's ridiculous. If Petitti does this, I lost complete respect for him as a commissioner if he backs down on this. He's got to walk away from this deal and say, don't even come to the table until I hear 9 conference games. Then we'll talk about a crossover game, and then we may open up the door to Notre Dame. But right now, the Big Ten would be crazy to agree to any of this stuff. And that's all I got to say, Greg. I mean, it's ridiculous how lopsided this is.
Yeah. Appreciate it, my man. Thanks for the call.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Mayor McCheese, just cause I feel like lighting $10 on fire listening to this. Thank you, Mayor McCheese. I appreciate your support. I'm not going to appreciate eating that cheeseburger live, but thank you so much, Mayor McCheese, for your donation, helping us keep the lights on here. I appreciate it so very much. Wet Blanket. Now, where was Wet Blanket's comment? I think this is getting lost here. If Petitti can take a stand and get the SEC to play 9, that's a win for the Big 12 as well. Of course it is. Of course it is. The Big 12 and the ACC have to insist on the SEC going to 9 games. Of course you do, especially the Big 12, because you are at 9 conference games. You've already got a bunch of more losses on your teams mathematically than the SEC. Now Yormark may not insist upon it because he's got his 5+11. That's the problem. That's why Petitti's basically all alone on this now. No, it's look, For years, it's been the SEC at 8 conference games and the Big Ten at 9. And of course, there's more losses in the Big Ten, and you hear all this. Well, but now if you go on a 5+11 and you're increasing the at-large bids to 4, 7 to 11, you cannot, and you trying to change the criteria more in your favor, and you would have had 6 in Big 12 again. Big 12. Jeff Fuller, everybody else, Big 12 country. Last year, on a 5+11, the SEC would have gotten 6 in, and the Big 12 would have gotten 1 in. Under criteria that isn't good enough for Greg Sankey. So, I get it. The Big Ten are the bad guys. I get it. But holy smokes, wake up. Wake up before it's too late.
Call from
John Grove.
John Grove, the floor is yours. Let it rip, sir.
Flug, I appreciate you for having me hop on the platform here for just a little bit. And hope you enjoy that cheeseburger as well before I forget to mention that. Anyways, I'm getting fed up. Frankly, I'm getting fed up with a whole lot of everything, a lot of politicking that's going on with college sports, in particular with what's going on in the Big Ten and the SEC. Even people like, and I love Nathan Baumer, I love Big 12 Mafia as well, but there are a lot of people hand-wrangling over how bad this deal is supposedly for the Big 12 and the ACC. All right? They're not rolling out the red carpet for extra Big Ten and SEC bids. Yormark has made it clear they want what's best for college football, even if it's not in the best own interest of the ACC and the Big 12. All right? That's been mentioned several times, and everybody's just saying, oh, well, this is going to be a bad deal for you. You just got to play to win the games. That's why you play to win the games. You got to turn the tides at some point. That's what Vanderbilt did to Alabama last year, and because of that, Alabama didn't make the tournament. Vanderbilt and Oklahoma beat Alabama.
But John, even though that did happen, and even though Alabama lost 24-3 to Oklahoma, still the SEC believed that Alabama should have been in. They would have been in if that was a 5+11 in those criteria, and the SEC is trying to make the criteria more in their favor. So when you say let's do it on the field, all you got to win. If it's all stacked up against you, it doesn't even matter if you win on the field. It doesn't matter if a Vanderbilt wins. It doesn't matter if an SEC team loses. It doesn't matter. It's already. The SEC's trying to make it so nothing really matters. They're going to get 6 in regardless of how they do. Basically, that is where this is going.
It's what's going that way, and you know what? If we'll see how the messaging works with ESPN and how much they'll continue pushing the narrative on what's going to happen here or there. I got another thing, a little bit unrelated, but touching on the 8-team schedules, I don't know why because you're always bringing up the SEC and saying, oh, you got to move up to 9 games. The ACC hasn't done their part either. All right, I don't understand why they're at 8 games, giving themselves a little bit of a boost when they have teams like Boston College and Wake Forest on the schedule every year. The Big 12's at 9. Well, I'm not hearing any noise about that. I understand, but part of the reason why the SEC needs to move to 9 is with this whole scheduling alliance. That's another thing as well that I'm kind of getting infuriated about. This scheduling alliance, and I know Brett Yormark said it doesn't matter whether or not they'll do a scheduling alliance. I mean, if you have that scheduling alliance, it's going to isolate everybody in terms of giving teams their opportunities in non-conference play. All right. It's so you're completely isolating anybody from getting an opportunity to go against one of the bigger squads. That's part of a reason why you're trying to boost your resume. I don't understand this politicking that we're seeing. It's so much back and forth. The SEC wants to make sure that they get their priorities straight. They want to lighten up the schedule. There's the conference schedule so hard, even though they added Texas and Oklahoma in the first place. I know no one's asking for fairness. No one's asking for.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let me just say this. I get it. Win it on the field. Friends call me Sean. Seminole says, ask Florida State if you just have to win it on the field. They go 13-0, but because they lose their quarterback, they don't make the playoffs. Which would have never happened to a Buckeye, to the Ohio State, to the Georgias.
Well, it wouldn't happen in a 12-team playoff either, Greg.
Okay. Last year, Alabama 9-3, who lost to Vanderbilt, who lost to Oklahoma in a dismal way. It wasn't a 1-point game. It wasn't by a late second field goal. 24-3. Alabama lost 3 games, and they weren't to the top of the SEC. They weren't. They were ahead of BYU at 11-1. Okay? They were rated ahead of BYU at or what was BYU? 10-2. They were ahead of Arizona State.
Yeah.
They were ahead of Arizona. So you say win it on the field, but the SEC teams, they're already getting the benefit of the strength of schedule, right? And they probably should. But now they want even more of a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets to the point where winning it on the field, that's a great rally cry, but you're not given a chance to. What, you got to go undefeated if you are a member of another. I mean, Indiana goes 11-1. 11-1. They blow everybody out. They lost to Ohio State. They got blown out by the national champions. They lost by 10 points to Notre Dame in the playoffs that went to the national championship, but they weren't good enough, supposedly, by so many people in the SEC. I mean, literally, if you go 9-3, 8-4, and it doesn't even, it's like even SEC Mike, who does a podcast, big time podcast, was on the Paul Feinbaum show. SEC Mike is shaking his head at the spring meetings and going, Ole Miss went 5-3 in the 8 games that they played somebody with a pulse. 5-3. And they looked terrible at times. And they think they still should have made it. Sankey thinks they still should have made it. So even SEC Mike is shaking his head at Sankey. And they want to tweak the criteria even more in their favor. So again, winning it on the field is a great rallying cry, but I agree with Nathan Brown and Wild Ute. It comes to the point where you don't have a chance. You don't, even if you have a great team, and if you flub up one time, you don't have a chance because everything's being stacked against you. Go ahead, John Grove. I'll let you finish the call.
Well, that's what it kind of comes down to, if I'm being honest here, Greg. I mean, we've seen throughout the past few years up at Big 12, besides TCU's run in 2022, the league hasn't really necessarily put up the numbers compared to what we've seen in the SEC and the Big Ten, and a lot of it just comes down to winning. All right, BYU, they won 10-2, sure, but they got probably the worst loss on their plate, and sure, Kansas was hot at the time, but KU was also 5-7. All right, so I mean, and I think BYU should have been in. All right, I think they should have gone in over SMU. You go into Dallas, you beat SMU, you deserve to be in the field. But I mean, you just gotta. I know 10-2 ideally would be where you want to place it, and maybe it might change throughout depending on the next few years or so. But goodness, a lot of people are just saying, "Oh wow, this is not good news whatsoever." It automatically guarantees one bid. I'm still bullish on the Big 12's chances. All right, look, you got so many opportunities this upcoming year. It is going to be a heavily centric quarterback league, 16 teams strong. You got Arizona State, who's expected to bring back a lot of people. You got K-State and Iowa State in the preseason top 25. BYU's there, depending on the Jake Retzloff situation. Texas Tech with their whole money. So there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of buy-in talent, and I mean, it would shock me if, I don't know. Now I'm starting to kind of backtrack on my words a little bit.
Yeah, I hear you.
I'm still under the assumption that, because, well, let's look at from an ACC standpoint. How many teams, because Clemson and SMU would be in, I mean, the 16, would Miami still be involved or would they not be?
No, the SEC would have gotten South Carolina, Alabama, and Ole Miss into the tournament, I think. I don't know. I got to go here. I'm trying to get one more call in, but I appreciate the call, sir.
That's fine. Have a good one, Greg.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it so very much. Ryan Brooks, honest question. Would Indiana have a better record than Bama with their schedule? Would Bama go to the same record or better with Indiana? I don't know. I think Indiana would have beaten Alabama. But I don't know. I mean, again, friends call me Sean. Alabama lost to Michigan. Indiana beat Michigan. I don't know. LSU lost to USC. USC lost to Minnesota. It wasn't like, and again, I say this with all due and love with everybody, the SEC to me is still the best conference from top to bottom. But the SEC had a down year last year. And I don't know why it's so difficult to admit it. The Big Ten has had a lot of down years, but the SEC cannot admit to it. It's unbelievable. You weren't all that great last year. I don't know what to say. Honestly, I still think you're the best conference, but you weren't great last year. Georgia was down. I mean, can't you see that? The middle of the conference you weren't better than the middle of the Big Ten. You weren't. So if in that year the SEC believes that they were screwed, then they're always, I mean, holy cow, what are we looking at here? Do we have to have it, what's the difference between, and I asked this to Big 12 and ACC, now I'm starting to flip. I'm starting to flip the other way. Would you rather have a 4-4-2-2-1, 4-4-2-2-1-3 that basically sort of limits the SEC to 4 to 5? They're going to get 5 bids a year. Because with this 5 plus 11 and the SEC wanting to change the criteria even a little bit more, you are limiting your spots even more, Big 12 and ACC. Honest to God, I'm starting to flip as I'm doing this live show. As long as the SEC remains at 8 conference games, and they're so bitter about last year's selection committee, it blows my mind. BYU's, these other teams, of course they were disappointed. Of course these other teams were disappointed. But they haven't held this torch for 9 months. But the SEC has. This is what they talked about in the spring meetings. And even SEC Mike is saying, what are you talking about? Alabama wasn't that good. Ole Miss, I mean, they were good, but they weren't. It was not a cardinal sin that these schools did not make it over Indiana and SMU. It wasn't this unbelievable cardinal sin. Again, just look at that Alabama-Oklahoma game. Indiana, I mean, that was Alabama's third loss, and that eliminated them, in my mind. Again, people disagree. But to be able to say that, and again, if it was 5 plus 11, that Alabama team would have made it in. That Ole Miss team would have made it. So why do you need to change the criteria even more in your favor? The SEC wants it all. They want it all. And because of Tony Petitti's inability to say on the stage, the Big Ten's to say no to this, the Big Ten is boxed in. If the SEC don't go to 9 games, I am sorry. But the Big Ten has to flip the board. They've got to flip the board. If the Big 12 and the ACC acquiesce to the SEC, the Big Ten has to flip the board for the good of the Big Ten. And I would argue even for the good of the football. I mean, if the SEC is going to, if they get everything they want on this, my goodness. No, it's not easy. It isn't easy. I've just explained, it's not easy. The middle of the Big Ten, with this rev share, with this NIL, the draft picks that between the SEC and the Big Ten, that gap is not as big as it was 10 years ago. It's not easy. It isn't. Again, Indiana was a good football team last year. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. There's going to be good football teams that are not SEC. The SEC had a down year last year. But they don't think it was. They think the SEC was as great as it ever was. And they were down last year. And you know what? The Big Ten could be down this year. The Big Ten everybody has had down years. But I guess the SEC have not. Last year, I think it was so apparent, so obvious. Anyways, I want to thank everybody who's joined us for the Saturday live show. Holy smokes. Ross Dellinger reports that the SEC has socialized to the other conferences that they are with this 5+11. And they want to tweak the criteria to make it more in favor of them in these early polls. And they want to stay at 8 conference games. The Big Ten has got to say no to the criteria change, and they've got to say no to the 8 conference games. And if the SEC does not bend the knee, then the Big Ten's got to flip the table, in my opinion. A lot of people disagree with me. Some people do. We are going to be covering this throughout next week. We got Judge Wilkin and that decision. This is a wild and crazy off season. And it's only going to get more crazier, especially if the Big Ten does something with one of those 4 private equity firms, if the SEC does something with Goldman Sachs, if the Big 12 and the ACC are actually doing some sort of, who knows what they're doing with clandestine phone calls in the month of May with Smash Capital, it's only going to get crazier. So I want you all to subscribe to our channel. Make sure you open up those notifications. We can come on live at any time. We did not plan to come on live this early on a Saturday, but we had to do it with the Ross Dellinger's post, his reporting that the SEC now agrees with the Big 12 and the ACC going to 5+11. But they want to tweak that criteria for the selection committee, and they want to stay at 8 conference games. Tony Petitti, wake up. Get in front of the microphone. Say what you got to say in public. and say what you got to say in private. And tell Greg Sankey about those advisory meetings that we've been having. See ya. Bye-bye. We're out of here. Until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.